Right, hi everyone. Welcome back to the Driving Talk podcast with myself, Paul Harvey, and Max Coates. The three of us are back together again, and this episode is titled The Croft Comedown because, to be honest, Max, it's a week and a half since you've had what is effectively the British Grand Prix of your racing life, the grand home race. Have you actually come down from it yet?
Yeah, probably have, to be fair. Been on a bit of a first couple of days after were a bit of a whirlwind, so sort of back and forth to different racetracks. The sort of week building up to, 2 weeks building up to the week after was all pretty mad. And then now it's started to sort of chill out a little bit more. So I'm trying to remember where I actually was the weekend. But that such is life of a racing driver, is sort of here, there and everywhere all the time. And yeah, so all kind of merges into one.
I suppose that's a great thing about this podcast is we are literally going to learn about how a professional racing driver like yourself lives his life, because it's one of chaos.
Yeah, semi-organised chaos. So pre-Croft weekend. So for those that don't know, I race in a Porsche Sprint Challenge GB. So that is, it's not quite Porsche's entry level point. It sort of is. So it's Porsche's entry level point on a very professional footing into motorsport. So there's Porsche Club who run club-based championships for anybody who owns a Porsche. And then sort of on Porsche's GB pyramid, then Sprint Challenge sits in at the bottom of it. So while I've been racing for a number of years, I am still on that entry point in Porsche's categories. Probably maybe could be having a go in Carrera Cup, to be fair, given sort of experience and stuff, but it's what budget allows. And one of the rounds of the Sprint Challenge is at Croft. I live 5 miles from Croft, have done all my life. So anybody in the surrounding area who's into motorsport pretty much knows that I race at Croft every year, and it's a massive event for me. So and this year was probably our biggest yet, I'd have said, in terms of grandeur of what we were trying to do, really. So and then coupled with that, the weekend before was Britcar 6 Hour, which was like a very last minute thing for us to do. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind couple of weeks, to be fair.
And Paul, you've just come off the back of running 3 Graves cars in the Enduro KA for their 12-hour race. So have you recovered yet?
I guess it's normal, isn't it? Day after to have a little bit of a post-race droop. It's probably the best way to put it. I think you're being very generous suggesting that I ran 3 cars. I was on headset for most of the weekend and certainly was there on the practice day as well. But no, I think it's just natural that if you've had a really exciting 12-hour race, which turns into like a 14, 15-hour day by the time you're getting ready in the morning, go to assembly, 12 hours of racing, then go back down to Parc Ferme and make sure everything's there, and then the drivers can come back, and then we've got to pack up and head off up to Knock Hill for the rest of the team as well. So that was a long day by anyone's stretch of the imagination. And I think Nicky Taylor from the Mini Challenge, he was racing in one of the cars, 6.5 hours of driving, which is bang on the maximum limit that he's able to do in that 12-hour period.
I'd say you've done
really
a lot.
Exciting, but that's tiring. That is, I had the easy job.
What time did you start and what time did you finish, Paul?
9 a.m. till 9 p.m.
We didn't get up at 9 a.m. So what time were you up?
So wake up 5:30. I live about an hour and 15 minutes from Snet, so wake up 5:30.
So I think that's the thing. If like people have never watched or been involved in motorsport, you go, it started at 9 a.m. They're like, oh, well, that's quite good. You get up at 7, have a nice mosey breakfast. You have a full English before it starts. So you're up at 5:30. You're leaving the house at 6 for 7:30.
Yeah.
And you probably still feel like you're running late and clambering all over yourself to get ready for 9. So that's exactly what it's actually like, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I left at about 10:30 p.m. So, and I left before.
Paul seems to have frozen from his. I think we've lost Paul.
Paul's
He's still on his come
yeah,
down.
we've lost.
What's going on?
He is still on his come down from the 12 hours. But to be fair, when I was previously doing it with Club Racing UK, and there was the year it was post COVID, the 3 drivers, Nick, Steph, and Matt, that were in it, we won the race. It is a very long day because you've got wake up in the morning, make sure the cars are prepped, get everything ready, get the drivers ready, go to the grid, because once that flag drops, you're going for 12 hours and that's it. So you've got to get everything ready on the lead up to it. So I can absolutely, well, Paul's drops out completely. Hopefully he's going to drop back in. Okay, welcome back. We've managed to get Paul back. And so we were talking about the 12 hours. So obviously the previous point I made, you get up mega early, you race the 12 hours, and then you've got to do the pack down. But in your case, Paul, I guess you bugger off.
I'd like to think so. Didn't quite work out like that. So I feel guilty if I leave too early with the rest of the guys working. But I did get to about 10:30 and said, right, okay, enough's enough. Time for you guys to finish off these last bits, because some of the guys were staying at the track. Sam and Peter were staying on track in the lorry. Carl still had a couple of runs to take a couple of cars back because they were going to be heading off to Knockhill for the TOCA weekend with JCWs, which they are there and tested today, I believe. So, I left about 10:30 in the evening, got home probably about 11:45 with a bit of traffic on the A11. So, yeah, long day, 5:30 to 12:30, so pretty much 20 hours.
That's pretty much how my 2 weeks building up to Croft felt, to be fair. So I think certainly pretty much every day over the course of the race weekends, we were running our own hospitality unit for the first time, which we kind of ran all in-house. So certainly kind of Thursday, Friday and Saturday night were all definitely gone 11, if not gone 12 by the time we'd finished, not gone to bed, like finished in hospitality. Getting set up, getting ready, getting tickets organised, making sure everything was all right. And then we had a bit of a complication on Saturday because the wind tried to blow a tent away. So in between qualifying and my race, I was trying to make sure there wasn't a tent on the track. It's not been played. The British touring cars would have been quite interested. Yeah, I think I got into trouble for that. So, so we were, pretty busy. Like the days start fairly early, pretty much up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and we stay on site. So you're out and sort of straight into it, really. So yeah, it's busy, probably busier than a lot of people really realise and see what goes on behind the scenes, to be fair.
And I'm guessing because it's your home race, you're much more in demand and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, certainly. Well, to be fair, every day. So for example, we had Friday test session 1 was about 10 to 10. So we were trying to get a few bits, new logos and whatnot put on the car Friday morning before we went out. I know that seems very last minute, but by the same token, I think we got there at 8:30 on Thursday morning and left there at about 11:30 Thursday night and spent the whole day setting up the tent, organising tables, chairs, a kitchen, a serving area, a truck, lighting, power, food, people for hospitality. So we hadn't really had time to do that on the morning. More or less, by the time I'd got out of the car and put my helmet on the dryer, then the local media had rocked up to do an interview with me and Ethan. So then we did that before the guys then went on to get their cars prepped. And then I went along with Croft to go and host a live video for the local newspaper with 2 touring car drivers. So it was Nick, was it 3? It was me, Nick Halstead and Aidan Moffat. Yeah, so just the 3 of us. So that was like another hour or so. And then back to the team, quick bit of lunch, quick bit of going through the data and stuff ready for session 2. Did session 2. Then quick look at the video and the data straight after that because our driver coach needed to get away. and then more or less straight back from that into, right, is the car ready for the weekend? Have we got everything that we need from hospitality before everybody shuts at 5 o'clock? There's a new hospitality flight case coming from Swan Flight, so that was to go and collect. So we had somebody go and pick that up on Friday afternoon after the. That's an example of Friday, and it wouldn't usually be quite as chaotic as that had it not been Croft. The Saturday we had 50-ish guests. That would still be quite a busy Sunday at any other event throughout the year. We then had about 120, I think, on Sunday, of which 90 were in our own hospitality unit, 20 were in hospitality and with Porsche on Saturday. So, just by the time you're organising all those guests and where they're going and having a chat with them and that sort of thing, it just takes up a lot more time than a normal weekend, basically.
I suppose at some point you've got to get in the car and actually drive it as well.
Yeah, well, that's when you get a bit of peace and quiet. So you shut the door, and then, to be honest, predominantly nobody talks to you then. So, which I don't really like. I prefer to be chatting to people. So, at some point you get in the car and you go. But that, to be honest, like as a racing driver, the getting in car and going bit is kind of it's probably something that's you're expected to be able to do at that level, and you've got to be able to manage all these other things around it to live life as a professional racing driver. So if you've got to spend all that time working on driving the car, then ultimately you're not good enough to be in at that level, or certainly to be doing it with all these other things coinciding. And you've got to put a lot of trust into your team to be able to get things organised and sorted between sessions with the car and whatnot. So, there's lots of people who are involved in that whole setup of what goes on to make it all achievable, really.
I think the surprise for me is probably the expectation that you have to still be very hands-on with all of those peripheral bits like the tent, the hospitality, sorting tables and chairs. You're operating at a professional level of motorsport, and one ladder below 911s in the GB Championship, and there's still a lot to do outside the car because that's the reality. But people just expect you to mince up in your race suit, almost like arrive and drive, smash the car around, bash out some lap records, bring home a trophy, jump back in the car and go home. But it's just completely not the truth and not the reality for a pro driver.
No, not really. And I mean, maybe it is for some people. A lot of people is either self-funded or are not needing to do it in quite the way that I do, which is probably it's not completely unique, but there's not loads of people doing it in the way that I do. So it is a bit different. It is quite hands-on, and that's how it goes, So when I actually found out that I'd won the race on the Sunday, I noticed how we've gone through a race weekend. I had 2 podiums and a win. We hadn't even talked about any of that yet. But
that's the thing. We were going to get to that, but no time like the present, I guess.
No, well, I found out that I'd won when I was packing down the hospitality unit. Do you know what I mean? Most other drivers were probably on the way home. I was still taking down a tent trying to get it done because it was going to rain. So, and then I left about 12:30.
I mean, talk through the racing aspect of your Croft weekend then, because obviously you've just been through absolutely everything to do with what you've got to do for hospitality, setting up for what is effectively your home race. I mean, the family business is, 3 miles down the road?
Yeah.
So it really is your pièce de résistance this weekend every year. So there's got to be an immense pressure on your shoulders. And then in qualifying, you managed to stick the car in a bloody decent position. So
we were pole for a lot of the qualifying, which, to be fair, was a bit of a surprise. I thought we'd be top 4. I didn't think we'd be pole. I thought if I could be on the front 2 rows, I'd be pretty happy with that. And yeah, I just basically had a load of stuff that I needed to execute from practice and put it all into place for qualifying. And to be fair, I felt like I did that. So in a way, probably shouldn't have been surprised that I'd kind of found pretty much everything. So actually just looking back at the sector times yesterday, and I think I was probably 3rd or 4th fastest in each sector. So I think there was a little bit of an element of I put the full lap together where others maybe didn't. But ultimately it felt pretty good. And to be fair, there was a yellow flag on my best lap coming into Barcroft. So for anybody who knows Croft, knows it doesn't, there's a really fast section out the back, a left and a right, Jim Clark S's, and in the Porsche that is absolutely flat chat in qualifying, but it is sketchy. Like there's a few laps where I had some big opposite lock at 120, 130 mile an hour, and you're like, oh, I'm nipping, that's quick. and then you come towards Barcroft. So as I went into the left, probably one of the with a lot of experience, you learn to like use your peripheral vision. So as I was turning into the fast left, which is like 3 corners before the yellow flag actually was, I sort of clocked the yellow out of the corner of my eye. So I was trying to spot that the whole way through that section to work out whether it had gone out by the time I arrived, because I knew my lap was good. So as I arrived into Barcroft, it was still on. And as I got to the apex, it went out. So I could then still do sunny in, sunny out at sort of full pace. But I'd lost a 10th on entry into Barcroft, and that was enough to lose me pole. So I was half a 10th off pole, and I lost a 10th versus pretty much every other lap in qualifying through that one corner. So I know I had pole within me, which is a real good confidence booster going into the races later that day, really, and the rest of the weekend.
We'll tell you what, we'll take a bit of a break there. We'll come back to it, and then we'll talk through your Croft races, because the last race of that weekend was probably one of the most entertaining races of that weekend, certainly at the front. Okay, welcome back after a quick break, and we'd gone through qualifying. We'd gone through basically the hospitality mess that Croft was for you, Max. So talk us through those races, because that last race of the day was probably one of the best Porsche Sprint Challenge races I've ever seen. So talk us through it.
Yeah, so race 1, I started second, more or less immediately dropped back to 4th. So I pulled the gear for second too soon. The car bogged, and then I immediately went on the defensive. I think Matt Armstrong had already come through, but I lost another place to Steve Roberts, who's sort of leading the championship at that point. Steve then dropped a wheel on the grass on the way out of the fast chicane first lap, so I was back into 3rd. And to be fair, felt really, really fast in the first couple of laps. So I immediately tried to chase down the 2 leaders, the 2 Team Parker cars, so Joe Warhurst and Matt Armstrong, and more or less immediately got back onto the back of them. And then tried to put a bit of pressure on Matt, but ultimately couldn't find a way through. And then after a while, it sort of plateaued out. I had one really random engine glitch, basically. Partway down a straight, I dropped a bit of time, and that sort of dropped me off the back of Matt, and then I'd probably burnt my tyres out a bit. So Steve Roberts started coming back at me, and then eventually his tyres went off, and we all just plateaued and finished 3rd. Joe ended up with a out of position start penalty. So he then dropped back to 4th. Matt won. I got 2nd. And to be fair, I was gutted for Joe, because it was his first pole in his car racing career, first race win outright, and he was so chuffed when he'd won, and it was quite a nice feeling actually, because I remember having my first win, which was at Croft in the Clio Cups. My first win overall on TOCA package was there, and when I got out of the car, Mike Bushell came over and was like one of the first driver to come over and see me. And he sort of like came out and sort of did like this bow. And I sort of had that feeling of somebody with his level of experience, like really appreciating what I'd just done. And I remember as like a young driver, I sort of really appreciated that support. And it was quite nice because I felt like I was being Mike and Joe was being me in the same situation, but like quite a long time further on. So I was genuinely gutted when Joe had the win taken away from him. Sort of, in a way, felt like I'd felt those emotions back of me winning, and I can't imagine what that would have been like to have that taken away from me. So I was like proper gutted for Joe. So that was Saturday, and to be fair, I was pretty chuffed with, well, third or second. It was our first dry podium, done on genuine pure pace. And I felt like myself, the team, driver coach, everybody involved had sort of like really earned it, and we'd sort of finally made that step to go with your two big teams at Parker and Redline and really challenge them. So that was Saturday afternoon, or Saturday evening really. And then the guys did a pretty big job on overnight, because I hadn't actually bust the radiator, but I'd damaged the radiator enough that it needed some new bits. So it needed a new right-hand radiator and that sort of thing. Anyway, the lads were up, my dad mainly, Dave, I think Jack and maybe Lottie were there till about 1:30, 2 a.m. on Saturday night. So I was massively thankful to them for getting the car sorted. And then we went into Sunday race day, which was chaotic from a guest point of view. Just a bit of a mad one altogether. So I think the racing on track in the other series is quite entertaining as well. I never really saw anything, but there's quite a lot of delays. Did you watch anything?
Unreal. Yeah, the Legends were unreal. I don't know if you saw any of it, Paul.
Yeah, I watched most of it. At the end of the day, I tend to record it all when it's happening. Obviously, try and watch Max and the guys in minis if I can, and then catch up in the evening and just scoot through the bits in between, because it's quite a long day otherwise. And also try and do it when Alison's putting Charlie to bed and see if I can get it all done in about 40 minutes. So that's my Sunday evenings normally to try and do it. But I mean, yeah, all the racing was good. Obviously, Ethan sustained some damage to the car, which was unfortunate, but it happens. The minis went really well. Yeah, that was
less than ideal.
Yeah, all the minis went really well, and the Legends were just as good. So actually, from a racing perspective, it was great, and definitely, I think they even said on commentary on ITV that it's possibly the best Porsche Sprint Series race that they've had to date, and going to be nothing other than a great advert for the series, which hopefully helps grow grid numbers and everything else. So yeah, no, across the board, I thought it was a great weekend of viewing.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of carnage in the Legends. Is kind of what I'd heard from the side that had maybe caused us to be a bit late. So our second race, sort of the good one, if you like, is the one that ended up being quite late. So certainly earlier on in the day. So first race on Sunday was bloody difficult because it started raining as we went out, stopped, and then started raining again as we were midway through the race. So.
Well, I mean, was it proper rain or was it psychological?
No, it was proper. It started a bit psychological, but we dropped sort of probably 4 seconds a lap, and I think at that point it's proper rain. I don't think it was helped by the fact that the rain then made it a bit sketchy, so we maybe like a second or so off, and then someone had clapped the tyre stacks, which I don't know whether they were a talking point in the rest of the races, but certainly for us, I felt that they're in a dangerous position, and just really there's no need to have a tyre stack on an Apex. It's is wrong in my view.
Well,
but anyway,
having watched from the TV, I think you pretty much ignored the fact it was on the apex from what I saw and just drove through it quite a few laps.
Well, yeah. Yeah, well, I hit one. Fortunately, it wasn't enough to do to stop my race. It didn't puncture the radiator, but it has done I think about 2.5 grams worth of damage. It's pretty needless. Do you know what I mean? I don't need a 2.5 grand damage bill for being that far out. Do you know what I mean? That's what frustrates me. And so far, mine's only been a cost implication. It's not been an issue on safety yet. We only need to look at Callum in the last race, who clipped a tyre stack, then had coolant going onto his tyre. That probably didn't help ABS when he went into the next corner, and he had a massive crash. Like, that was pretty huge.
Yeah, big.
That has pretty much written that car off. And if the tyre stack wasn't there, it would never have happened. I get that you can also say, if he didn't hit the tyre stack's on track limits, he shouldn't be there. But to go through that quick, that accurate, that many times, you are going to hit it at some point. And I'd rather have a penalty or a telling off than a written off car. That it's just the consequence is far too big for the crime being committed.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I have appreciated is that the radiators sit in the corners of the front bumpers, so they're not in the middle as they normally would be in some other cars. That if you're going to hit
there is one in the middle as well, but there's also one at either side.
Yeah,
exactly. So
got to think about these.
But equally, you've got steering at either side of the car as well. You know what I mean? And you only need to tweak the wheel. You hit one of them with a steering whip, a steering arm, and it pulls the wheel really quickly. You've got to break someone's hand, thumb, wrist. It's going to do some damage. So anyway, that's enough tyre stack stuff. But yeah, the rain in race one was significant to cause a bit of time loss. I don't know whether Joe went off on the fluid or whether it was the rain, but certainly when it rained, I felt really, really quick. And when it was dry, I didn't feel quite as fast. But ultimately, I passed Joe when he went off, and otherwise stuck behind Matt, and to be honest, just settled for second. I didn't feel fast enough to catch him without probably risking a bit too much. And I was comfortably ahead of the third place battle, so I just chilled out where I was, to be fair. And the way the weekend works is grid 1 is off qualifying position, grid 2 is off second fastest qualifying lap time, and then the third race is off your finishing position from race 2. So equally, starting the last race from second was a pretty good place to start, and I didn't want to mess a good chance of a win up. So yeah, started the last one from second, and definitely had my best start of the weekend. And I knew I was quick in the first race at the start, and that was probably when I was going to have my best shot again past Matt. So I just hammered it and was darting all over the place. Wherever I could see a gap, wherever he wasn't, I was. So
you could see it.
Yeah, that was my plan. And to be fair, people kind of go, it seems like the best you've driven, but if I'm on the attack, that's me all over. I like to think I'm exciting in the car. So if that's the case, then usually it's fairly exciting to watch. So I just tried to make a gap and make a move, and then it kind of backfired on them a bit because they really rubbed me up the wrong way. But on lap 1, I ended up going around the outside of Matt turn 1, which I never intended to do. I just sort of was like, I'm gonna have you, so wherever you're going, I'm going somewhere else and seeing what happens. And basically he was not brake checked me, but like let me go around the outside, and then wouldn't let me get back into line going into the next corner. So Joe ended up getting through, which is his teammate. And I was like, if you lot are playing team tactics, you've got another thing coming, because I'm now angry. So you don't want angry Max for 18 minutes. I'm gonna have you. So I was on it from there. Fortunately for me, Matt had a puncture on the way out of the next corner, so he got calmer, and it come back and bit him in the arse pretty heavily. And then Joe pretty much got taken out by Toby at the next corner. So when I'd seen that, I was like, well, Toby's probably going to get a penalty. All I really need to do is get past Joe. And later in the race, Toby hit Joe again, and that's where I got through. So ultimately, like, the process to get the win was actually relatively easy. I just passed people when they fell off or got hit. But I think, the action for me was really hotting up at the front to win on the road, as well as after Toby's penalty. And I think had the race run its time with another 4 minutes, I'd have probably been through. So I really felt like Toby said afterwards that his steering was out. So sort of the back section of the track, he was really, really struggling. And I was just trying to manage my run through the back section to see if I could try and get an overlap. But it's so fast and so hard to do so out there that it was pretty tough, really.
I think the thing that you can tell when someone's on it, when the brakes. I mean, this is a nerdy thing from my perspective, but when you see someone taking time out of someone on the brakes in similar machinery, in broadly similar levels, running at the front of a series like that, when someone's taking 5, 6, 7, 10 yards out of braking, that those are the sort of things I think, they're on it. And that extra confidence and the extra speed.
Yeah.
You could see you with a quicker car at that point, you just couldn't get in front. And obviously the nature of the track with a couple of slow hairpins and stuff, it's going to lead itself to all sorts of potential. But, it was really impressive, and I was excited to see it, and I'm sure everyone else was as well. But obviously got a vested interest knowing you're in the car, but, you were definitely on it.
Yeah, it felt that way. It felt like it was only a matter of time, really, to get past Toby. It was probably made slightly tougher by having Joe there as well, although I don't think it never really got to the point where I had to defend over Joe more than I had to attack over Toby. But there was a few points where I maybe couldn't attack Toby as much as I really wanted to, which is probably a surprise to anybody watching. But there was a few points where I had to just sort of be mindful of Joe behind. But, hopefully, I think we've had probably 2 races that were kind of like that so far this year. One being at Snetterton, one being at Croft. I think Toby is quite a defensive driver, and to be fair, was kind of out of position for his pace that weekend. He'd generally been 6th or 7th quickest and not really matching the pace of those guys right at the front. So I think when he got there, especially then with damage, he was on I've just got to defend. I'm never going to pull away. I've got to park the bus. So I think that naturally makes quite exciting racing. But we'll see. I think there'll be more of that going forward. I definitely think, Steve Roberts has been mega so far this year. He's going to be right in contention right through. Joe's pace all weekend at Croft was pretty stunning. He backed that up in the test on the Tuesday, 2 days after Croft. Matt was very fast at Croft. He'd also been very fast at Snetterton, but like me, he'd had a few track limits penalties that held him back a little bit. So I think, them 3 guys, for me, are probably the guys that I'm got my eye on now through the rest of this year for where we're going to end up in the championship. I don't think Toby will be far away. But he definitely didn't quite have the pace at Croft that them other 3 did, and myself. So I think just depending on how he comes back at Donington, we'll kind of see where we're at. But he was strong at the test. So I don't think he'd be far away either, to be fair.
And that's so obviously, Ligon, we're kind of just over halfway through this year so far in the Porsche Sprint Challenge. So how do you think your maiden championship campaign's kind of developed?
It started really well, then went rubbish, and then it's gone really well again. So I've learned loads, and I think now, first round was a few wet races, which I think kind of helped us early doors. We've always been pretty good in the wet, and we kind of found a good wet setup by going, I think that's what we should do and give it a go. And it sort of all worked. We were pretty far off, certainly in race trim in the dry at round 1. We'd learned a lot about that at round 2 at Snetterton, but unfortunately track limits penalties there really hampered my results. And then I feel like at Croft we kind of got to grips with it. Between Croft and the test on the 2 days later, I feel like I've got a lot of questions answered with how the car handles, what we're trying to do, how we make it work over a race distance, what works, what doesn't. Some things I don't really want to share too broadly, but there's definitely things that we have found that for me have been big light bulb moments. And I think I'm getting to the point now where there isn't too many more of them to find, where earlier on in the year I was like, we're missing something. And now I sort of feel like we're not really missing a right lot. Just got to keep going at it, really.
So where does the driver coach role sort of come into that from there? How does that work for you? I mean, I popped into the test on the Tuesday. You could tell that the team had a long weekend, and they did really well to get everyone sort of back up, including yourself. You've got to get yourself back up on Tuesday. But the driver coaching bit, and I mean, just to let you know, I saw him in a 911 on track, and that guy does not hang around, right? So,
no,
but
Chris is fast boy.
Yeah. I was like, who's that? Oh, now I know who that is. I was like, eyes wide open. You could just noticeably different, right? And on it immediately. Incredible to see for a very short period of time. But how does that work for you? Sort of. I mean, I played professional cricket for a bit, so I was used to having a coach and be coached almost delivery by delivery all the way through the winter and in the mornings in practice. But how does that work for you now? So,
I mean, I'm also a driver coach. So I think it's sometimes weird for some people to think, well, why does he need coaching if he's a driver coach or whatever? But I think everybody's got different experience, and sometimes you just need somebody to bounce things off and look at it and critique you in a way that you're not doing yourself. So ultimately, I go out in a race car, especially that Porsche, I drive it as fast as I think I can drive it. And if that's not the fastest out there, then somebody needs to challenge the ideas that I'm having about how to drive it to make us go quicker. And that's what Chris does. So Chris Diamond's our driver coach for both myself and Ethan this year. He's got a fair chunk of Porsche experience. Did a couple of rounds in Carrera Cup with a very, very well established, very good team, and got to grips with the thing straight away. So since then, he's done a lot of Porsche club driving and also does a lot of track day coaching in Porsches. So he understands the technique of what to do in those cars very, very well. And that's something that I didn't really have a clue about or understood to a point at the start of the year, but didn't necessarily fully understand everything that I needed to do so. Now I'm getting there with it. I understand what I'm trying to do, and I'd say probably 95% of the time I'm doing that, and the 5% of the time is what we're trying to trim up on. And that's the difficulty in sprint challenges. Everybody's really quick. Lots of guys have had a lot of experience at it, and certainly sort of the three guys that I said about even Toby. Toby's done it for 2 or 3 years. Steve's done it for 2 years. Matt's done it for 2 years. Toby's only done it. Joe's only in his first year, but he also did the Porsche Central Europe Championship pre-season, which is basically a season's worth of running. So the guys who I'm racing against have a year of experience on me in terms of driving time. But yeah, back to what Chris does in his driver coaching role. Essentially, we've got a V-box in the car that has a connection to the CAN system of the car. So we get a video and then loads of data. So we have the lap times, and basically every lap can be compared against each other, which then gives us a delta, so we can then see effectively how I did every corner and also the best that I did every corner. So let's say take Tower, for example, at Croft. It could be a third gear corner, it could be a second gear corner. You could brake after the bump or you could brake before the bump. If you brake after the bump, you're going to get not as good a drive off the exit of the corner because you're going to be in quite hot and moving around. So what we'd do in the practice session is try those different ways of driving it, and then you've got a feeling of what you think's right, but then you come back to the data side of it and go, right, well, from the braking point to the next braking point, what was faster? And then you can start to establish, right, well, actually, third is the right gear to be in and you should brake really late and don't worry too much about your exit, or you should worry about your exit, or whatever the circumstance is. And then equally, as well as matching all your best bits together and then trying to put all them together on one lap and then repeat, the other aim that you're trying to do is then as a driver coach, and this is in my role when I'm driver coaching as well as what Chris does with us, is look at the shape of the data and try and understand whether that is perfect or not. And if it's not perfect, then work on it. And if it is perfect, then understand and rinse and repeat, basically. So that's his role. So it's look and combine our best, understand what that is and try and amalgamate it, and then understand if the best that we've done is not perfect, how do we make it as close to that as possible?
It's a little bit more complicated than my advice to Rob on a test day at Snetterton, which is, I don't know what load of theories are going on in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, stop messing about.
And sometimes it is just that. But when you get to, to put it into perspective, I was half a tenth off pole. I feel that was because there was a yellow flag out. Otherwise, I'd probably been on pole. But even so, I think the next two were within a tenth of me. So there was like a tenth and a half covering the front four for race one. In race two, for our second fastest qualifying, I was 0.098 off pole and I was third. And then behind me was less than half tenth. So basically half a tenth is a position in sprint challenge. So when you look at what finite differences make a thing, just go faster and grow a pair of balls doesn't really cut it. It's got to be quite technical, and it is about 2 bar of brake pressure at one corner, or moving a brake point by 3 meters, or moving your apex to be 3 meters earlier or 3 meters later, or your power application was avoid tire stacks, or like you took 10 meters too long to get to full power, but that was because you came to it a bit early. So it's all those sorts of things that you're trying to work on, and they all make such a big difference in a championship at this level.
I can imagine. I mean, it's still, like you say, it may be what you would consider to be at the lower end of the pyramid, but it's still it's Porsche backed, factory backed racing, and there's not a lot of error on those cars from what I understand. So there's a little bit more, proper what I would call mechanical grip that you've got to come to terms with as well in setting up the cars. So
no, definitely, it's a great fun car to drive. Great championship, and one that I'm really enjoying, and I think hopefully we are now right within a shout of the championship, and that's got to be the goal now to the end of the year.
And just to let you know, Rob, if you do make the effort to go and see Max and congratulate him on his victorious win on the Sunday, he may well turn around to you and say, "Why are you here today? I don't know what you're doing here today."
I was like, what are you doing? I don't understand. Why are you here? I'm more than welcome to be here, but why?
So explain, would this be to do with your meeting at the test day?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I understood exactly why Paul was there, because he brought 4 bags of sweets, and to a very tired team, that was really, really welcome. But I guessed his involvement in the day was a bit more than 4 bags of sweets, really.
Yeah, I think it was more like 6 bags of sweets, bacon rolls and a lot of caffeine, including for your dad. He likes a cappuccino. He had a cappuccino in the morning, and he went back more. Normal coffee in the morning, cappuccino in the afternoon. So not very Italian. He's got it the wrong way round. But
Yeah.
I think I like catching up with the guys and girls. You could tell everyone was a bit tired. And they'd had a long weekend, and then to get ready and be ready for you guys in the right way is an endurance test for the support teams, as you've quite rightly articulated. But it's just nice just to catch up with everyone face to face. I don't tend to be around for the race weekends if I can help it, because you just get in the way, because I'll slow things down. People got jobs to do. Everyone's focused. But it's always good to just ask a few questions, see how things are, catch up with Carl and the rest of the team, and Pete and everyone else, and you guys. But I know to step back and keep the distance, but also know that 10 bags of Haribos and a couple of coffees make a difference.
Definitely does
to how people.
I think for me, I was so surprised to see you there, because Donington's obviously not that close to home for you. So, if you'd popped into Brands, it'd have been a bit like, "Oh, hi Paul, how you doing?" But I was like, "Oh, you must have not have just come here to see us."
Well, no, my hero Max Coates was going to be there on the back of a great win at his home circuit.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to rub shoulders with greatness temporarily. Hopefully, it'll rub off on myself. You never know.
Oh dear.
The funny thing is,
be careful. There's a bit of soundbite there, isn't it, about me rubbing myself off against Max Coates? But we don't want to go down that path if I could help.
Rob's screenshot picture from before was perfect for that.
Yeah, we'll get that out on the socials, I'm sure. But I mean, it was the one thing was, obviously we've got the group chat for the Driving Talk podcast, and I just said to you guys, are you up for maybe recording a podcast? And Max, you were actually like, yeah, I'll do that. Paul texted me quietly and was just like, Rob, the whole team's absolutely shattered. Let's give it a miss this weekend, mate. Just let's do next week. Everyone's just absolutely gone. So it would have been a podcast. It would have been a podcast, but I think you would have been talking in gibberish or Yiddish or something completely.
Largely me falling asleep, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, just 40 solid minutes of Max snoring. But Roland, so obviously you did the test day, and then Max buggered off, and you've done what you needed to do, and then we go into the Enduro KA weekend. So that's kind of where Graves have effectively come from, Paul. So you jumped in and helped out at Snet. How did the race go for you?
So it was good, actually. Just a bit of background is we ran Run 1 Graves customer car with Fast Al McDonald, Nicky Taylor, and also we ran 2 cars for MSVT Racing for the champions of the various series that they'd had the year before. Part of the reward for them is to get a drive in the Enduro KA that's free of charge to them. So we had sort of champions of what was last year's Super Cup. Scott Parkin from Darkside, who knows lots of different cars raced KAs before. He partnered up with the 2 guys from the Fiesta Club Racer, which had won Class D of the Trackday Championship in a ST150, very nicely prepared car. In the other car, we had John Lynn, who'd won Class B in a 328 BMW, and he shared that with Dan Abbott, who'd won Class C in the DC5. Darren Goes also had the opportunity because he'd won one of the categories as well, but unfortunately wasn't able to make it. So then Dan also jumped into the customer car because you need to have a certain amount of drivers and to make the time limits, because it's a maximum of 2 hours 20 minutes pit entry to pit exit. So we kind of balanced it up. Friday, I think testing went okay. A lot of it was very simple in terms of just giving people seat time in the car. I wasn't there on the Saturday for qualifying, but qualifying was very, very wet. And Nicky, obviously coming from mini challenge, being young and brave and very highly skilled, was the quickest car on track and held pole position for a long time. And that puts us in a good position on the Sunday. And
wasn't he
it's not just about, we didn't have the quickest car in a straight line.
Wasn't he like 6 seconds faster than anybody else for ages or something?
Correct. Yeah. He literally just got in, drove the wheels off it, found the grip, and just showed everyone how to do it. I mean, to be fair, a KA is probably not too different on power to a Cooper.
Yeah.
I think what we were about 70 horsepower against 130.
They're over grip, so I guess he's basically used to having a car with bugger all power in it that's massively over gripped. So he knows exactly how to get in and maximise everything.
Yeah, and he did that. He did that with aplomb. Was massively quicker than anyone else. I'm literally driving around the outside of people in quorum as though they were sort of on a cool
I
down.
had the same
lap.
sort of thing at
And that's
Alton
the
Park
skill
when I jumped in, and I think my first lap was like put me on pole by like 10 seconds. Like everybody caught up, but like the first radio call was like, "You're on pole by 10 seconds." I'm like, "What? What are you on about?"
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing about KAs is you've got someone like Nicky, who's a championship contender in a highly competitive series. You've got two guys that are racing British and European GTs in another car further down the pit lane, and then you've got someone who did their ARDs on Thursday, qualified on Saturday, and did their first race on Sunday. All on the same grid in same machinery. So the race went largely uneventfully, which is a good thing. All three cars finished. We know that one of the cars didn't have the strongest of engines, and seemed to go a little bit quicker when the exhaust fell off. Interestingly, so they have a tendency over 12 hours. As you can imagine, these are pretty much bog standard engines. You can't modify those in any way. The aftermarket suspension, they're now running on Toyo 888s, no matter what the weather is, because originally they were running on more of a road-based tyre, but that was screeching too much around the corners, and for long endurance races was annoying the neighbours, so they put 888s on to just give them that little bit extra grip, so they weren't making as much noise for social perspective. But the competition at the front was tough and tight, and the two cars were nose to tail for a few hours. I mean, for me, coming from mini endurance racing, if you like, 45-minute shared racing, to sort of having been 6 hours on the pit wall, knowing you've got another 6 hours to go, that's amazing. And out of the 30 cars that started, I think 29 or 30 finished. One car rolled, so they proceeded to put it upright, bring it back into the pits, kicked out the windscreen, took the boot off, took all the windows out, straightened it up as much as they could, and they were back out within 35, 40 minutes, and then proceeded to do 7 hours with no windscreen. So, welcome to Enduro KA. I think that there's some rule clarifications potentially coming around some fuel cans and some nozzles, which I think will just level it up again. But we're there to give the race champions good seat time, an enjoyable drive, a great reward for their good seasons that they'd had before. And then on the customer car, Al McDonald, who regularly races, did a fantastic job and got everything. I think what I would say is every driver got everything they could out of the cars that they were given. They all stayed out of major trouble over 12 hours, managed the tyres really well, doing stints of 2 hours, 15 minutes on the 200 at Snetterton. That's no mean feat. I think Al came in at one point. He said, I had a bit of a moment. He said, I've sort of been out there for an hour and 45 minutes. I came under the bridge into the left-hander and suddenly thought to myself, oh, I've forgotten to brake. and he said, that was lively for him.
I can imagine.
and he managed to sort of style it out. And it's a pleasure to work with those guys and be on comms. And sometimes you just don't talk to them for half an hour and just give them a half-hour check-in. I've not spoken to you for half hour. You're half-hour into your
stint. Are you still going round?
You're now sitting in. So, yeah. Are you still there? Everything okay? But it's a real good bang for your buck. So for me, if I'd have been in the car, that would have been a whole season's racing in one day. Nicky did 6.25, 6.5 hours, whatever almost the maximum that you're allowed to do. And was on it all the way through. But that's a lot of seat time and really good value for money in what is broadly, I say broadly because everyone, there's always different budgets and different levels of car, and people chuck fresh engines every time. But it's broadly a very similar spec controlled series that had every single person in the pit lane clapping every single car that came through at the end of 12 hours.
Right? Just having fun.
Club racing is all about. And to finish at 9 o'clock going into dusk is just great. I mean, I know you've been there, Rob, with the club racing guys in the past when they've won there, and that's what motorsport's all about.
Yeah, I mean the C1's the end of a 24-hour race is actually to see Robin Welch, who if you look back through the podcast archives, you'll see the 2-hour interview I did with C1 owner Rob Welsh and his racing career. So do check in on that interview. It's a very emotional one at times as well. But yeah,
you do know it's a long race when you got breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You got 3 meals in a race. It's
yeah, 3 meals. Yeah. Stop for meal breaks. Yeah. So I'm just going to go off comms for a bit.
That sounds like a regular race weekend with Graves, to be fair.
yeah, we're not short of food, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, to be fair, I want to switch to the other side of the parapet now and talk about C1s, because I actually ticked in the weeks. Obviously, been working on the podcast and getting some interviews. And at that weekend that I did the interview with Robin, I was at Snet with the BRSCC, obviously covering their live stream, and I ticked something off the bucket list, and I told him that at the time. I commentated on a race with Richard John Neal. That was big box ticked. It was a super sport endurance race on the Saturday, and it absolutely pissed it down. And I mean, threw it down. There was at one point I was wearing an umbrella hat because the rain was coming down that much. There was Mazda racing, and the drivers were saying to me in the interviews after the race, I literally could not see past my bonnet. I was relying on the cars in front to brake so I could see his lights where they were braking. And in fact, Ali Bray, one of the front runners in the Mazda Super Cup, which is arguably one of the most competitive one-make series in the country, he threw it off purely because he just couldn't see. The spray was unreal. So it was, as Max just tries to get himself some lights. Good to see you again, Max. You're very
Barbie
pink
Max.
again.
Very pink.
Barbie Max.
I can't see myself. Never mind them guys. So
yeah. I mean, it was very good racing, but on the Saturday I got to commentate with Richard John Neal, which was absolutely fantastic. Box ticked, brilliant. He was doing the main comms for the weekend, and I was doing the presenting side of things. And then on the Sunday we had a fantastic C1 race as well. 35 cars. Tom Ingram on the grid. He was there with Ron Johnson in one of the MLP Developments cars. Really good to chat to Tom. Actually, one of the just a real down-to-earth guy to talk to. And we've actually got brands coming up in a week and a half. I'm not going to be on the live stream for that one, but that's going to be another C1 weekend where we got some properly good professional drivers in the cars as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
How long's that race,
Rob, you're not doing bad. Sorry, Rob, you're not doing bad, are you, with ticking things off your list after the Super Tourers, meeting some of your idols from Aussie V8s and Bathurst, and now commentating with RJN? I mean, you're on a roll.
That's probably the first time you've ever seen me speechless. I mean, we went to Super Touring Live, and the reason I was going, okay, Super Tourers it's my childhood, it's the pinnacle, but I'm also a massive V8 supercars nut. Absolutely love it. If you say to anyone, Lap of the Gods, you should know it was Greg Murphy, 2003, Bathurst, that pole lap.
Mega. Was that first 203 or something?
So,
you sure it wasn't my 57.8 in a Civic round Brands Indy, Rob? I feel insulted.
But it was the first they got into the 206s. But if you look back on that lap, it was a H pattern box. I mean, 203s that you're probably referring to, Matt, was Scott McLaughlin when he broke the record in the FGX Falcon, which had a bit more aero, and that was the 203. But, I mean, Greg Murphy, I think he broke the lap record by 2 seconds. I mean, this was Lap of the Gods, and he's won it 4 times. And Stephen Richards there as well. He's won it loads of times with different, he's been team mates with Craig Lowndes, Greg Murphy won it with. So I'm going absolutely gaga. So I'll set the scene for you. Paul's like, right, come on, because I get a bit shy. And Paul's just like, right, come on, we're going to go up and meet these people. And Paul is not backwards and just going straight into the garage, hi, make the introduction. And I got to chat with these guys. And for about an hour after, well, I'll let Paul explain.
Well, he didn't. He was almost in tears at the end of it. I mean, he got in the car to go back over from the pits over to the overflow paddock because Sam was running the 120 diesel in Trackday Championship at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's
we were there supporting Sam. By the way, I'll just put that in there. We were there supporting Sam.
On Brands GP.
Well, we couldn't give a monkeys about Sam.
And Rob's like, oh, yeah. So sort of, so Rob's saying, oh well, we've got some of my idols are over there. I'm like, right, get in the car. What do you mean? Right, we're going over. That's it. Just get in the car. Right, so we're getting in the car, and he's gone quiet on the way over already. Right? So, I mean, I don't actually know these drivers. I know Paul Radisich because I got in a car with him about 30 years ago, which I reminded him of. He won't remember me, but he remembers sort of doing the events before he was known. And I just walked straight in. And what I would say is, and the thing that I found incredibly moving was, number one is, Rob's passion, as you could see, for those cars and that era and those drivers. But without exception, that all of the drivers gave Rob 15 to 20 minutes of their time, genuinely thanked him for his interest in what they're doing, talked to you like you were a long-lost friend, were incredibly polite, incredibly gracious, answered your questions. And I think after the first 5 minutes, you kind of eased into your conversations with each of them, which was different. I mean, you're incredibly knowledgeable. So from their perspective, I think that probably helps the conversation, that you know what you're talking about rather than just sort of being a random. And it was for me, it was so heartwarming to see, you achieving something that you wanted to do and meet some people that you really wanted to meet. I feel like that every time I meet Max. So, I understand how you felt.
That's why you want to do a podcast every week.
In fact, one of the drivers wasn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I feel now, Max.
That'll rub off in
overflowing.
Couple of days.
And I think
couple of episodes. Sorry.
Yeah. Don't worry. Oh, yeah, exactly. I'll feel all the adrenaline will drop, and I'll just be in a depression for the next 48 hours until the next time we meet. But the other thing as well is, I think one of the drivers wasn't around, and Rob obviously knew which garage the car was in that the driver should be. And one of the team went off and got the person. He was talking to one of the other drivers, and he stopped what he was doing to come back to the garage to give Rob 15 minutes of his time. They were all incredibly gracious, all incredibly communicative. You didn't feel in any way that these were people that wanted you out the way or were just paying lip service. They were incredible ambassadors for motorsport. And I was immensely proud that Rob had that opportunity and that they dealt with it in the way that they did, because you just don't know how people are going to be. And then we got in the car and nothing. He literally just sat like a zombie all the way back. And then we got back in the overflow paddock because the racing had finished, and he didn't say anything for about another 30, 45 minutes. And I think the best way to say is you just had a little moment for yourself, didn't you, Rob?
That was it. It was certainly probably, it was emotional. It was like, holy shit, like I hadn't had to go to Australia or New Zealand to meet these guys. They come here. I'd met people that, and I told them, I was like, I watched you. I used to have Motors TV and BBC Grandstand for the British touring cars and Motors TV for the highlights of the V8s. And I remember sitting down watching Greg Murphy do that lap on the replay about halfway into the week. But the best bit is, Paul, Max, I mean, Greg Murphy's obviously gone back to Australia and he's doing media commitments. He's just been in Sydney Motorsport round for the recent V8 round. And he actually told Speed Cafe, which is the big Australian motorsport news outlet, the equivalent of Autosport over there, he's actually said to them, like, why the hell aren't supercars pushing for a round in the UK? Because they've got the fan base. They're busy looking for an overseas round in like Singapore and Bahrain, which has got a few F1 fans that, let's be honest, they don't give a monkeys about supercars. They're there to watch Formula One. Whereas if the supercars came to the UK, damn straight. Damn straight. I mean, that would be the round. And there'd be several, my good friend from Club Racing UK, Nick, he was there as well. He was going gaga over it because he watched V8. So, I mean, if the supercars came to the UK, and Murphy even said, do it at Brands GP, because it is one of the questions I said to him, because he was doing demos in one of his old cars. I mean, Alex Sidwell's got one of his old Holden Commodores that he got second at Bathurst in 2009, I think it was, the Sprint gas car. And he said, I was there cutting laps, and after a few laps, once he got the tyres warm, you could tell he was pushing it on the demo laps. And you can watch the onboard back, and you can tell that he is absolutely treating it like free practice on a race weekend. And he said to me, he was just like, dude, we need to get supercars here. Those are his words. Like, we need to get supercars here. This is unreal.
I'd love to see it.
I mean, I think they're going to get massive. They're going to get massive crowds. The Brands GP is Brands GP. It's just an iconic track, no matter what. I'm not sure whether you and Nick would be able to handle it actually coming to the UK, Rob. I just don't know. I'd call an ambulance in advance and just have it on standby just in case, because I don't know what it's going to do to you physically and mentally, to be fair. So
I'd need about a week afterwards to recover.
I think that's being very generous and conservative, yeah.
Yeah, I need to just sit there about a week afterwards and contemplate what the hell just happened, because I look at life very differently now since events, tail end of last year. And the fact that I've just literally, in a few weeks, Met some Bathurst heroes, big tick. Commentated with Richard John Neal, big tick. I'm like, if you just said to me a year ago that I would have done that by now, I'd have laughed you out of the room. But life throws these things at you sometimes. What can I say?
Yeah, and then obviously the pinnacle of all of that is putting an eco boost in your Focus.
It's long overdue. I've only just got the engine and box in there, but obviously the last race I did was the modified Fords at the end of April, and I've needed to get a lick up, but I've been so busy with work. Obviously, my day job at Silver Lake, we've been doing loads of events on the weekends at local shows because we're trying to promote reclaimed parts to the wider community. And we've just had so many local events, and I've had so much on. Plus, also going and doing commentary, I physically haven't had the weekends to get in the garage and do the engine swap. So weekend just gone, I can report that the EcoBoost is in the car. I've filmed some bits. There will be a low-res ramble on YouTube at some point. And I'm hopefully I'll get it all together, get it mapped, and be out racing towards the tail end of the year.
Fantastic. And you got anything coming up early next week at all?
What are we doing early next week, Paul? Oh yeah, Goodwood. So take us through that, Paul. We are at Goodwood for the Evo magazine track day, are we not?
Yeah, look, I don't know if I want to declare this with Max on the podcast because I need to keep this particular car a secret from him. So kind of the cat's out of the bag with it. But Jason and I will be at Goodwood. It's Evo magazine. I've got a track day there, 30 cars only. And for the first time in the UK, we'll be taking out the BAC Mono in earnest, as well as the Caterham. If it's raining, neither of those cars are going because I don't do wet in open top cars. But yes, I'm really looking forward to getting behind the wheel of that.
That'll be mega a good one.
Understanding the value of it, the actual pounds value of it that we've been told, which is more promising than we ever could have hoped for. I don't want to crash it.
I'll tell you that
for fun. Yeah. But yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to getting that out. And I sent my acquaintance, Mr. Goddard, who this very day has been down at his local supercar dealer getting some brand new Kumos on there ready for Monday. So we're going to drive both the cars there on the road. So the Mono's got an MOT and everything else. So we will drive that the 30 minutes from where he is over to Goodwood. And if it's sold out, it's a maximum of 30 cars. If it's not sold out, then it's going to be less than that. And I think we're going to get some decent track time. The weather looks like it's moving back into our favour because it did look a bit wet first thing Monday. But at the moment, touch wood, it is looking as though it's going to be dry. Because I don't want my first UK experience of that car to be on a
Have you done a track day at Goodwood before, Paul?
Yeah, done Goodwood in a
They usually run it in sessions there, so they usually let about 8 out at a time. So with sort of 30 on track, you probably 8, 16, 24, probably like 4 sessions. Probably going to get like a session an hour to give you an idea of what you probably get.
Yeah, and I think when I've done those time sessions before, normally the last couple of hours, 1 or 2 cars might not still be running. A few people go home a bit early. And the last time I was there actually was an open track day with Dave Woodall. And we actually had unlimited running for the last hour. And we were the only car on track for the last 30 minutes. So literally it was like private hire, millionaire racing. And it was great until we got black flag for the Civic being too noisy. But that's another story for another day. But and actually it was Sam's fault because he'd been trying to race a Porsche GT3 as you do in a 250 horsepower EP3 Civic and keeping it very honest and getting past it. But in doing so, completely ignoring the fact that in a couple of areas that had the microphones for noise levels, you just needed to lift. But forget that. Let's just
ignore that.
Let's do the GT3. So
JRD.
Exactly, that's JRD engaged. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. Obviously, even just the Caterham's going to be pretty cool around there anyway. Right, so it's pretty tricky to say that you're going to have your second car as a Caterham. Most people will be very happy to have that. So we're very privileged, very lucky. Looking to get some extra jerry cans because I intend to maximise the time on track if we possibly can do. But the Mono's going to be really great, and I'm really looking forward to it. And stretch its legs. Yeah. So you're welcome to come and have a play in it, Max. You're more
I'm away to Ireland this weekend for a wedding, so I'm a weekend away from motorsport, which would be a bit different for me, but yeah, it'd be nice. So yeah, unfortunately, I'll have to leave you to Goodwood on your own, but have fun.
I'm sure it won't be the last time we take it out. So
endeavour to be there at the next, that is for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, and Rob's coming along with our friend Ed. So just be nice to have a bit of a social, bit of a catch up, and get some time in the seat. I've actually had to clean my race suit. Then realised I didn't have any proper race suit wash. So Demon Tweaks, thank you very much. 24 hours later, next day delivery. But yeah, that's hanging up on the washing line, ready to dry out. Which I probably should have got in, but I've been in
race suit wash. I just put mine inside out in the washing machine.
Oh no, you get special stuff, Max. Got to have all the stuff.
40 degrees, inside out, washing machine, jobbed. There you go.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think I did 30 degrees. This molecule cleaner that stops it from getting smelly again, or whatever it is. So I've definitely, if I'm a salesman by background, so I'm easy to sell to because I believe all of the rubbish that any product tells you. So it must be true.
Absolutely, could sell sound to the Arabs. This man, Mr. Harvey. But yeah, I mean, really, gents, I think that's us just about caught up after a few episodes where we've been doing a bit of interviews, and I put a couple of throwback interviews on there as well. It's nice to get back into the swing of things, especially halfway through the racing season. But I think that rounds up quite nicely the Driving Talk podcast for this week. We're hopefully going to get some fantastic interviews lined up with the three of us and some drivers of note. We have been trying to get some David Pittards and Dan Rowbottoms on, and we're still going to try and get that done. But I think for now, that's about all from myself, Robert Lewis, Paul Harvey, and Max Coates. What do you reckon, lads?
No, I think that's great. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Another good one in the books, and hopefully I've got a guest on next time.
Yeah. See you next time, folks.